Chapter 141 Labyrinth of Time and Space 4. The mage returned with a serious expression. Then, between the palms of both hands, a fireball appeared. Unlike Amy, it was a single sphere, so it would be much easier to increase its density. She's going to concentrate the firepower, isn't he? Isn't she? She's so anxious to win. As expected by Amy, the mage was tense. Of course, as she had never numerically calculated the power of magic, she didn't know how many points she would get, but it seemed difficult to think she could unleash 3 times the power of electric arrow. Ha! The mage vigorously extended both hands. In the spirit zone, under the mage's control, inertia is ignored, so there's no need to perform a special movement to cast a spell. Even so, taking a shooting stance was the mage's struggle to increase her concentration even a bit. Amy followed the fireball with her gaze, while the time and space labyrinth held the fireball. A whirlwind of flames was unleashed. The mage looked at the sphere with eyes full of expectation, but a moment later, her face changed to a somber expression. The score was 1,330. It was only 310 points higher than Electric Arrow. It was a big difference for a swordsman who was purely evaluated for his physical ability, but in the realm of magic that applied phenomena, there seemed to be a difference there. This can't be. No, this is because the firepower is distributed. I can at least score 2,000. No one responded to the mage's voice. The difference was too great. No matter what he did, he couldn't surpass Amy's score. The archer thought it was already too late to pass through this place. The girl who scored over 3,000 was expected to be the highest level here. In the mercenary world, the so-called divine Mage also scored 1,330, and the fact that he showed more than double his magical power meant he was at least the greatest talent in his age group. Rian and Tess were thinking the same. They didn't intend to underestimate Sharon's ability, but Amy was Sharon's senior student at the academy. If she, a senior student, failed, they assumed it would be difficult for even Sharon to show more. Amy was the only one who didn't think this was the end. Sharon, you need to take this seriously. Maybe because it's so narrow that I couldn't get through it. It's okay, I'll do my best. The leader sarcastically curved his lips. Huh, what's the point of doing your best? Results have to come out. It's already over. Let's retreat and go back. Sharon realized something by seeing the leader giving up without even trying. The time and space labyrinth was called the Angel's Eye. Why on earth did he build such an altar? But it was time to set aside the fleeting intuition for a while. Right now, the priority is to focus on the work of the altar. Sharon closed his eyes and performed the sequence method. A faint point of light was born in front. Subsequently, an innumerable number of photons flooded the center and increased their size. What? Photon at output? What impact do you have with that? Said the mage with an absurd expression. Despite this, the reason she couldn't take her eyes off Sharon was the strength that couldn't be seen with the normal photon output. The moment Sharon opened his eyes after completing the sequence method, a white sphere of size a white sphere the size of a fist began to vibrate as if it were about to die. Sharon gritted his teeth and fired the photon cannon. A beam of light that extended at a speed slower than light struck the time and space labyrinth as if to crush it. The mercenaries who initially didn't expect it were fascinated by the beauty of the flush and trembled as they awaited the score. 4,783. People's eyes widened as an unexpected number appeared. In particular, the mage and archers who were well versed in magic were amazed. It was because Sharon's magical release was none other than the photon output. Light doesn't have a special firepower. It's only defined by the product of speed and mass, the momentum. Still, it scored 4,783 points. In comparison to his peers, it was said that the impact was equivalent to the shock of 20 warriors who chose a structure to enhance strength and struck with all their might. What? What the hell are those things? The mercenaries started to get anxious. They didn't know what the principle of Sharon's magic was, but they knew that none of them could withstand it. But no one had time to think of anything else. This is because, despite being hit with tremendous power, the time and space labyrinth emitted a red light, as if it was defiant and considered him unqualified. Sharon felt exhausted. What the hell were these fears? Perhaps 5,000 points is the passing line. However, it seemed that the photon cannon couldn't increase its power more than this. I wish we could do it one more time. Amy covered her mouth and laughed as if she had been waiting. Ho ho, you understand my feelings, right? I felt the same way, but how many points do we have to pass? I'm not sure. It might be okay to try it with a laser. Oh, right, lasers can accumulate energy. Sharon's laser makes molecules vibrate, resulting in increased destructive power over time. In theory, there's nothing it can't destroy, making it perfect for such evaluation. But we have another round. We'll have to try it after taking a round. What do you think? Aren't you going to do it? Sharon said to the leader. But he stood there with a chewed sheet expression on his face. Seeing the score shooting up as the order progressed, he didn't feel like going out. As a swordsman, the only score he could give was around 200 points. That's it. It's already over. There's nothing left but to leave. The leader hurriedly walked towards the entrance. However, no matter how much he turned the doorknob, the iron door didn't move. When the group looked back in surprise, the man with the white tattoo spoke. You're one. If one person is evaluated, everyone must be evaluated. You can't leave before that. After hearing the archer's interpretation, the group finally understood. The rule wasn't just about integrating their wills, but aligning their actions. Oh, this is frustrating. Why are you asking me to do something that makes no difference? There was no end to the leader's complaints, but to get out of here, he had no choice but to show his skills. I'll be damned. I didn't know about this. Sharon felt a chill. Why hadn't they known this until now? All the rules explained by the man with the white tattoo were based on one condition: trust among companions. Upon reflection, there couldn't have been a stranger evaluation method. This was because, solely in terms of firepower, magicians held a much more advantageous position than swordsmen. However, that didn't mean the swordsman was weaker than the magician. Even if the magician could destroy rocks and split the ground, swordsmen specialized in close combat and could strike down a magician with a single blow. Furthermore, measuring magical power was an issue. If Amy, who specialized in long range magic, had tried the sniper mode, her score would have been much higher. However, this place didn't consider such a variable. The narrow octagonal altar, where special means couldn't be used, and the 8 spheres. Why 8? Just for balancing appearance, but didn't we, the 8, evaluate only one sphere? The strangest thing of all was the language of God. The labyrinth of time and space measured that amount of impact and expressed the value as a number. Why on earth? What does it mean? If it's to distinguish those heading to Kerugo, wouldn't it be enough just to indicate pass or fail? Depending on the duration of the race, the deviation of the scores increased enormously. A structure where everyone must necessarily be evaluated in such a state. The emotion that arose from there was not one thing: obsession with scores. You get anxious when a colleague gets a higher score than you. If you get a lower score, you'll be ignored. Without a perfect understanding of each other's roles, discord is inevitable. And what awaits at the end of that rule is, you can send one person through the sacrifice of another. Sharon took a deep breath. What the heck is Miro thinking? This was an evaluation designed to kill each other. Sharon, let's leave when that person finishes. Amy whispered. There was tension in her eyes too, as if she had the same thought. Rian and Tess were also wearing serious faces, as if something was wrong. Since they emphasized camaraderie, it was natural to be sensitive to this atmosphere, and since the evaluation was clearly unfavorable for the swordsman, they would have quickly understood the intention behind the rules. As expected, the leader didn't know what to do. He felt that the gaze of his mercenary colleagues was different from before. Yeah. Ewa. The leader ran without even having a chance to catch his breath. He was charging, but to Sharon, it seemed like he was fleeing from something. Is Kama used correctly? Where is the sword's location? What is the distance of the target to the target? As he ran without knowing anything, his steps wobbled. When he gave a small muffled cry and swung his sword as if crumbling, his accuracy dropped, and the sword hit the side of the sphere and bounced off. Darn it! The leader, who was trying to leave the labyrinth of time and space and the altar, quickly regained his balance and looked back. The number 32 was floating, but no one laughed. Their companions' expressions hardened, as if they had suffered great humiliation. What's the problem? We can't even pass. We did it, so it's done, right? Let's get out of here. The leader showed unnecessary bravado and left the altar, but his steps headed toward the place away from his companions. The party is over. It will probably dissolve once we leave here. Sharon thought it was time to end things. It was a pity. He couldn't challenge again, but there was nothing more he could do with the mercenaries whose trust had been broken. Can you translate for me? Sharon asked the archer. Even if he was leaving, there was one thing he wanted to confirm. The archer also readily agreed, perhaps feeling a sense of emptiness in the current situation. Of course, what should I ask? Has anyone passed through this door so far? The man with the white tattoo nodded decisively. It's a door for passage, not some kind of trap. How many points do we need to get in the labyrinth of time and space to pass? The eighth eyes of the angel will judge you. The man repeated what he had said at the beginning. In the end, everything was determined by the labyrinth of time and space. Jerome thought for a moment before asking the last question. What's the approximate passing rate for those who have come here? I'm not exactly sure. Sometimes many people come, sometimes only one. From what I've observed, it seems that 1 out of 10 times people pass. Most of the time, the passing rate is higher when people come alone. Sharon was startled. It was a much higher percentage than expected. Initially, he thought there might not be any passerby at all. It was due to the assumption that Miro's purpose in designing this place was not simply to assess skills. Of course, that opinion remained unchanged. However, the man with the white tattoos made it clear that there were those who passed, that too at an astonishing rate of 10%. The corner of Sharon's mouth trembled as he smiled, a shiver ran down his spine. Sharon, why are you suddenly like that? The director. He's a real trickster. Eh? What are you suddenly talking about? Amy asked with a puzzled look. But Sharon was not in a condition to respond. Alphea's voice seemed to echo in his head like an illusion. You should be able to get a rough idea of what kind of world Miro lives in. It wasn't a rough idea, but a clear understanding. It was saying that if one couldn't overcome an obstacle of this level, it was a message that one shouldn't try to learn about Miro. I'm sorry, Director, but I ended up knowing. Sharon didn't give up. He was determined to pass through this place during the travel period. Amy guessed as she looked at Sharon, who didn't respond. You haven't given up, have you, Sharon? If so, she won't give up either. At first, she only followed to help Sharon, but now she really wants to know about the girl named Miro. End of chapter 141. Chapter 142. Labyrinth of Time and Space. 5. Let's go already. Any complaints? Hey, open this iron door. The leader pounded on the iron door. His pride was shattered, and he couldn't bear the cold stares from his comrades. Is everyone in agreement? The man asked, but there was no need for translation. The mercenaries nodded without a word and headed toward the door. Their spirits were low. Coming here had been a serious mistake. They had hoped for gains from loot, but their loyalty was wounded and their money wasted. Guys, let's get out of here quickly. Come this way. The attitudes of the mercenaries were different from before. Though they were disheartened, they knew it would be prudent to be on guard while dealing with the kids. However, Sharon's group remained impassive, carefully watching the mercenaries. The magician grew silent and uneasy. The ominous feeling seemed to ring true when Amy spoke coldly. Do we want to leave yet? The heads of the mercenary turned in unison. A variety of emotions crossed their eyes, including anger, confusion, and fear. At least the resourceful mage swallowed her anger and spoke in a reassuring tone. Why don't you want to leave? It's over, isn't it? We're too tired and don't want to continue. That might be your opinion, but once we entered here, we became one. Don't you know, if we leave without considering everyone's opinion, it would be problematic. The mage was annoyed but had no choice but to humor Amy's wishes for now. Fine, I didn't pay attention to that part. Then let's go. Sorry, but that won't work. We have to pass through here and go to Kerugo. But there's no way to go. Ah, the woman's face went pale. There was a way. This was the chamber of achievements and sacrifices. It didn't necessarily require just achievements to prove oneself. The man with the white tattoo spoke quietly. Will you leave or leave someone behind? If you want to prove your skills, pass through the labyrinth of time and space. If you want to prove your sacrifice, send 4 people as sacrifices to save 4. What are you saying? As soon as Rian asked, the archer translated. Of course, it was a completely distorted and transformed language. Oh, that's strange. I definitely heard this. You can send 4 people at the expense of 4 people. The archer's eyes were filled with surprise. You knew the native language. What are you talking about? That's what I heard when I first came. Why are you taking us for fools? Can't you even remember what you heard once? The archer's mouth hung open. Oh, was that so? Did I not actually? Wasn't it strange to remember something you heard for the first time? Anyway, sacrifice 4 people. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exactly 4. The blood drained from the mercenaries' faces. That girl really intended to sacrifice someone. Rian and Tess also felt the tension as if they were in a real battle. In particular, Tess trembled in fear when the cute Amy suddenly changed. Sharon, is it okay? Amy is very scary. It's okay, she's just doing it on purpose. Does that mean on purpose? It doesn't seem like it. Just wait and see. Amy will handle it. The mercenaries looked at each other. If they fought, they would lose. Rian and the warrior were equal, and Tess was stronger than the leader. Furthermore, they were overwhelmed in the battle of the wizards, and even the presence of an archer was useless against Sharon's photon magic. Come on, let's go. These are faces that don't want to sacrifice themselves. Anyway, we have to do our best. What the hell is wrong with you? Is it because of what we did at the tavern? Amy tilted her head as if rubbing salt into the wound. The archer realized that he couldn't ease the situation with an with an enthusiastic, oh my God, with an enthusiastic response. He walked up to where Sharon and the others were and courteously bowed as he spoke. I'm sorry. We underestimated you and made a mistake. Please forgive us just this once. Hey, you should come and apologize. As the archer bowed and turned around, the remaining three also reluctantly approached. However, as it was a matter of life or death, their attitudes during the apology were respectful. We're sorry. We were too arrogant. Please forgive us. We don't do that anymore. We won't do that anymore. We've learned a lot from this incident, so can we forget about the mistakes we made at the tavern? Amy said, frowning. I really don't understand. What makes what mistakes are you talking about? Wait, tavern? Do you mean the tavern we were at? That's strange. Why didn't I see them? The mercenaries' faces turned as red as beets. It felt like they were being trampled on the ground, unable to move due to their wounded pride. This time, even Sharon couldn't help but tremble at Amy's stubbornness. If you if you anger Amy, you'll end up like this. Among the insults they received at the tavern, Amy and Tess suffered the most. The time when they were subjected to various humiliations and embarrassed simply for being women. Amy would never forget it, even if decades passed before seeking revenge. However, in a certain sense, this tenacity to seek efficiency could be called the essence of a wizard. Even if it wasn't necessary to go that far, the mage was irritated by the fact that she couldn't utilize the advantages granted to her 100%. That's why it's often said that wizards are eccentric. Indeed, many wizards lack human empathy. But it was precisely because of that tenacity in seeking efficiency that magic had advanced so far and would continue to progress in the future. What do you want us to do? Damn it. The mercenaries didn't know what to do and simply kept their heads down. The sound of grinding teeth seemed to be heard from where they stood. Only then did Amy get to the main point. I have a proposal. If you accept it, we might live together. What? To enter this place, you need to know a password, right? What is the password? The archer realized their intention. These kids were planning to challenge again. After going through numerous investigations and checking enough possibilities, they intended to come back here. Keltia, Lohoima, Arcasia, Withmia, Benzen. That's the password. What does it mean? Call my door and it will open. Amy looked at the man with white tattoos. Then she pronounced the ancient language that the archer had told her without a single mistake. Keltia, Lohoima, Arcasia, Withmia, Benzene. The natives guarding the exit noticed Amy's intentions and nodded. The archer was in a bad mood. No, in a way, he was amazed. He was filled with admiration for their meticulous side. Damn it, trust people a little. Do you think I would lie even in this situation? Who said that? There's nothing wrong with being sure. Anyway, I got it. Thanks. Amy approached her friends with a happy face as if nothing had happened. Tess stuck out her tongue at how her emotions changed like a chameleon. So, you were trying to figure out the password? Do you know how tense we were thinking we might have to fight for real? Haha, anyway, if we're going back again, it's better to know. Anyway, let's get out of here. When Sharon's group and the mercenaries expressed their intention to leave, the man with white tattoos brought the device to the iron door. The entrance shook violently, opening the way out. Just like when they entered, the mercenaries were the first to climb the stairs. But the atmosphere itself was different from that moment. Everyone hung their heads like defeated soldiers, and no one exchanged words. Sharon's group was no different. They remained silent. They couldn't enter the autonomous zone, but that problem could be solved by devising a strategy from now on. Instead, the idea of the labyrinth of time and space they experienced today complicated their minds. Time and space labyrinth. Why on earth did Miro create such a device? And why establish such cruel rules? What's in Kerugo? What is the connection between Kerugo and Miro in the first place? I would like to know. Maybe Miro is, while Sharon was analyzing, Miro Amy, who followed him, was also immersed in her own thoughts. There is no single way to investigate the ruins. Let's design all possible strategies. Sharon seems to have his own ideas, but I can't rule out the possibility of exploring the underground through the spirit zone. Even if we pass, there's an issue with translation. When we get out, we'll find someone who can translate. I should look for a local who can help. Tess was deeply impressed by this place too. Particularly, being able to quantify and confirm one skill was a significant achievement. The impact of a rapier could be counted more than that of a blunt weapon, but in the end, it still doesn't match up to magic. Can the sword warrior break through the door? If possible, to what extent? Sharon's magic was close to 5,000, which means my single strike is about 10 times weaker than that. Could that approximately double the acceptance criteria? Oh, if only I knew the pass line, I could set a goal. Since Sharon said we would return, I'll have to go and investigate more. Rian, who followed behind them, also remained silent. He furrowed his brow, indicating he has lost it in thoughts. in his thoughts. What should we eat when we get out? After walking for about 30 minutes, Sharon and the others reached the surface altar. When they knocked on the door from inside, the native opened the door, but the group was still tense due to the problem they experienced underground. As they exited, the refreshing air cleansed their lungs. Although only a few hours had passed since they started their journey, the sun in the sky seemed different, as if it didn't belong to today. Sharon's group and the mercenary group split in opposite directions. However, they didn't vanish from each other's sight. Sharon's group wanted to savor the experience, while the mercenaries were on the brink of collapse. Sharon organized the events. What should we do now? It was more successful than expected. So do we conclude today's exploration of the ruins with this? Amy also agreed. Let's do it. I've been working hard for a while and I'm tired. We should head back near early and make a plan. Rian spoke as if he had discovered something amazing. Before that, how about eating a bowl of noodles? That place earlier was good. Tess gave Rian a threatening look. Do you eat noodles over and over? At least eat some cold noodles with me. That's why you're so simple. What's weird about that? I put a lot of thought into making that decision. And so what? You just go in circles. While Rian and Tess argued about the menu, the mercenaries approached. Chiron and the others stopped talking and looked at them. There were warriors, mages, and archers, but the leader was missing, nowhere to be seen. The mercenaries hesitated to speak and exchanged glances. Finally, the mage was reluctantly chosen as their spokesperson and stepped forward. However, even she seemed uncomfortable, taking quite some time before speaking. Would you be interested in joining our mercenary group? A mercenary group? Yes, you see, there are many good things about being a mercenary. You can earn a lot of money along with fame, especially with your skills. You'll become a star immediately. As you can see, our leader has just left. So, oh, of course, you can be the new leader if you want. If you give us orders, we'll follow them without hesitation. And if other people join, we'll treat them very well. How does that sound to you? Sharon looked into the mage's bright eyes, and he said it immediately as if he hadn't even thought about it. No, thank you. After saying that, he turned around and left, and his friends followed Sharon without regret. Let's go eat noodles. They were delicious, right? No, you're just doing that because you want to fill your stomach first. If you hold on a bit, you can eat something much tastier. The mercenary stared at Sharon and the others. The mage's face turned sad, and a sigh mixed with sorrow escaped her lips. Ah, my wretched life. End of chapter 142. Chapter 143. The Name Parrot 1. There was a secret space in the Royal Palace Tavern, even within the Freeman organization. Only Volkova can enter. It was the loop manufacturing plant. Insolent brats. Do you think it will end like this? G's heart was pounding as he stood beside Volkova. He had witnessed Volkova's eccentricities for a long time, but the current situation was far more from normal. What the hell is he doing? What the hell is he going to do? Why did he suddenly bring me here? As usual, Jeez, returning from his job as a vendor at the port, was captured by Volkova's subordinates and brought here. It had been a day since Sharon and the others left, the tavern in the midst of an uproar, but Volkova's anger seemed far from subsiding. Cuckoo, just watch, I won't let it go like this. Volkova chuckled grotesquely, tearing at, tearing at the corners of his mouth. In his mind, he could already see the faces of the detested Sharon and his group. Among them, he particularly despised Amy. Fal- Falcoa nearly drew his sword immediately as he poured the liquor mixed with loop Falcoa had given him and revealed his red eyes as if to gaze at it. Jeez glanced sideways at Falcoa, terrified. What Falcoa was playing with at that moment was the device that turned loop into powder. The loop root is pressed to extract the juice and then ground until all moisture is removed, leaving only a fine powder. But could this be called a drug? Originally, loop was chewed along with saliva to neutralize its effects. However, the current substance was nothing but a highly toxic chemical with intensified efficacy. Geez, I need you to go back. To where? To talk to that girl, Amy. Since we managed it once, we can do it again this time. Don't say you can't. If you also have eyes, you'll know what my condition is. G swallowed hard. He thought Volkova would seek revenge, of course, but it was unexpected that Volkova would go this far. Jeez had realized that Amy was a descendant of a powerful family. If he dared to harm her, it would only be a matter of time before Galliant was razed to the ground. Are you planning to drug her? Drug her, stupid brat. That girl will never become addicted. Don't you understand? If someone as prestigious as the red-eyed bearer, who has made his name known across the continent, becomes addicted to this weak loop, what's the point? Is that so? Then there's no need for this, right? It will only cause trouble. Jace tried to reason with Falcoa with a ray of hope. However, it seemed Falcoa had already stopped listening to anyone. What an idiot. Can't you think properly? I never thought this plan would succeed because she wouldn't become addicted. Falcoa placed the refined loop powder on blotting paper. He then poured it all into a cup of water he had prepared. G stopped breathing. He knew how loop was used, although he rarely used it himself. Usually, one root was enough to chew for about 2 hours, and there was still some left over. But the amount of Falcoa's loop that he put in the water was 3 times greater. Moreover, as it was in liquid form, the drug's effect, which normally took 6 hours, should be received all at once. Don't tell me. Yes, it's true. I'm going to make her ingest this. That girl will definitely accept and drink it with confidence. But with so much loop, she'll die without even being able to move. Do you understand what I mean? Why are you doing this? If she dies, you won't be able to sell her. Ha ha ha, it doesn't matter. Bring her body back, even if it's a corpse. Falcoa poured the loop substance into a glass bottle. As the substance mixed with the drink that was already inside, it gleamed with a beautiful jade-like color, similar to a cocktail. Here, take it. Drink it. Drink it. It's a simple task. Invite her to talk, give her this to drink, and then bring her back in the courage. Can you do it? G stared at the glass bottle with bloodshot eyes. His body trembled with fear. Amy wouldn't refuse, and if she took a sip, it would be the end. What's wrong? Won't you take it? Or do you want to drink it yourself? Falcoa's murderous intent pressured G's. The killing intent seemed to form a hand squeezing and grabbing his throat. Enough. Scum. What? Falcoa hesitated at his words. Was there still a trace of the loop's effect? No, thanks to no, thanks to not removing loop from his mouth, even for a moment, even the medicinal effect of loop was now dull. What did you just say? Say it again. There are times when a person is rather calm when experiencing something too absurd. Falcoa was like that now. Getting angry might come later. First, it was important to check once more if the words of this young man, whose head hadn't yet dried from the blood, were true. Jeez couldn't get the words out of his throat. Perhaps this was his last chance. If he admitted his mistake now and begged Falcoa, he might survive, albeit barely. But Jeez couldn't bear to bow his head to Falcoa. I don't dislike guys like you. That phrase, spoken with a smile by Amy in the courage, left Jeez speechless. Why was that? He could admit his weakness, but the moment he thought about apologizing to a Falcoa, he felt that Amy would become a liar, so even if he wanted to take back his words, they wouldn't come out of his mouth. Enough, disgusting brat. Someone like you isn't even human. A child so drugged that he can't even think straight. Calling trash like you is a compliment. Dizziness struck Jeez. While pleasure and fear mixed, his consciousness drifted away, unable to control his mind. But he let go, like Sharon, like a person whose future doesn't exist. Falcao's fist struck Jeez's anguished face like lightning. Wow, in the darkness enveloping his vision, he finally realized the reality. What awaited Jeez was a miserable future that could only be described as hell. Crazy bastard, what's wrong with your head? Falcoa finally showed his true colors and began to beat Jeez. It wasn't just a beating to intimidate, he was kicking G's body as if he were truly going to kill him. If Schema had been used, G's body would have been crushed like meat hanging in a butcher's shop. Die, die, die. G's couldn't even scream. He felt as if his whole body had been crushed for a while, but now he couldn't feel anything. Only the shock that surpassed any pain reached him. Yeah, it's not fun killing someone like you. Falcoa regained composure. However, it was an indication that G's would suffer an even greater misfortune. Punch, punch. Falcoa grabbed Jeez by the hair and lifted him. It seemed like his neck would break, but Jeez's condition was so complicated that he couldn't even worry about that. All right, then I have an idea. If Jeez doesn't step forward, Amy will fall into the trap. But Falcoa got tired of considering the small situation. I'm touched, Jeez, a coward like you showing so much courage. It seems you've fallen for that girl, but don't worry, she won't be touched as you wish. How do you feel? Happy? Please, just please listen to me. Jeez, Jeez shed tears. He already knew what Falcoa was thinking. Yuna, right? Your little sister's name, right? You'll regret the decision you made today for the rest of your life. No, please. At least spare Yuna. Oh, Falcoa slammed G's head to the ground. It bounced like a ball. His face hit the ground with a thud and slumped down. With that single blow, G's lost consciousness. Cuckoo. Anyway, it turned out to be fun. Of course, he had no intention of forgiving Amy, just because his target had switched to G's sister. He planned to take Yuna to the hideout and torment her, then use her life as a threat to manipulate G's. When he threatens to risk his sister's life, he knew that Jeez would have no choice but to comply. Take Yuna to the hideout right now. Giving orders in a fit of anger to his subordinates, Falcoa chewed on the entire loop route. When Sharon and the others arrived at the village, it was already close to midnight. The distance had been considerable, and they had stopped halfway to fix things and return by night. Although they didn't get their desired results in the achievement and sacrifice room, they gained a lot. The conversation among the four never ceased, and as a result, they ended up sharing stories that they had hidden in their hearts. Oh, do you want to become a soldier? Hearing Amy's hopes for the future, Tess opened her eyes wide in surprise. She hadn't expected that Amy would aspire to become a soldier. Certainly, as a fire system mage who had honed her sniper mode, she would be perfect for a battle mage. However, the Amy that Tess knew was a kind-hearted person. Contrary to her appearance, she couldn't imagine how Amy would fare on the battlefield, defeating countless enemies. To be honest, I'm worried. I thought a more feminine profession would suit you better, Amy. Really? A feminine profession? For me? I've never heard of such a thing in the academy. Tess could guess how lively Amy's school life was. However, as someone who could read people's true feelings well, Tess knew the real Amy. Hehe, I have experienced on espionage operations. A girl like Amy is actually very delicate and feminine. Amy gave a subtle smile. She had never considered herself feminine, but she couldn't completely deny it. Even if she had a strong personality, she wasn't sure if she could adapt well to the male-dominated military world. Actually, I'm not sure, because the long-range type is fire system. I chose it. As a result, I had no choice but to choose the most advantageous job in my specialization. Of course, I have a positive view of becoming a soldier. After all, not all soldiers are just for fighting on the battlefield. That's right, there are supply officers, and if you enter the headquarters, your future looks bright. All right, how about something like this? Tess clapped as if suddenly remembering something, and Amy asked with curiosity in her eyes, like what? Tess stretched out her index and middle fingers, pretending to point at someone walking on the white sandy beach at night. I mean, becoming a spy. Amy's thinking ability is excellent, and besides, long-range attacks are your specialty. Plus, you possess the most important weapon for espionage operations. The most important weapon? What is that? Amy's eyes sparkled. From her perspective, as someone considering her future, she couldn't help but get excited about the fact that she had another unknown advantage. A pretty face for spies. Beauty is essential, because no man in the world dislikes a beautiful woman, Tess said mischievously with a smile, and Amy turned her head with a pout. Hey, what's that? I got my hopes up for no reason. Sorry, but I wasn't just kidding. Having an impressive appearance is a priority when recruiting national spies. In professions involving dealing with people, Amy's presence would definitely leave a strong impression. So think about it carefully. Seriously, I'll give you a strong recommendation within our family. I'm fine. I'll just rely on my magical skills. Amy's face turned red. Although she acted indifferent, she didn't dislike the compliment that she was pretty. Oh, how nice. Look how feminine is she. For Tess, Amy was a friend who was fun to tease. Tess, who was thinking about how to tease her more, suddenly remembered something she was very curious about. By the way, what will happen when you graduate? Of course, I'll take the official exam and find a job. No, I mean Sharon. Sharon? Why Sharon? End of chapter 143. Chapter 144. The name Parrot, too. At first, Amy couldn't understand and blinked, but when she realized what Tess was trying to say, she turned her head away with a perplexed expression. Why are you saying something weird all of a sudden? What does Sharon have to do with my graduation? But think about it. Sharon is still in class 4, and you're in the graduating class. Also, with your skills, you'll definitely be able to graduate next year. If that happens, won't you go to the capital? As soon as she heard the words go to the capital, Amy's heart suddenly beat faster. She had never thought about it before, but realistically, it wasn't that far off. It has nothing to do with me. Oh, really? Amy spoke coldly, but Tess couldn't feel the slightest hint of sincerity in her tone. Amy, who remained silent for a moment, finally revealed what she had been keeping inside. As Tess had expected, still, we made a promise. He has to catch up to me, no matter what happens. That's what he said under the condition that we could talk comfortably. Tess let out a surprised sound. Oh, if they had come this far in their conversation, then their mutual feelings were far from trivial. Indeed. Sharon is amazing too, but you said he ascended to class 4 in just half a year, right? Even if he's a genius, do you think it would be possible for him to graduate so easily? Indeed, even Amy knew it. Sharon's accomplishments so far were beyond what an ordinary person could emulate. An 18-year-old boy who had lived without even knowing magic had ascended to class 4 in just half a year. Expecting more from him might be greedy. Amy looked at Sharon's back in front of her. Had Sharon ever thought about something like this? If he really graduated, would Sharon miss her? It was hard to take the first step among those who had given their best. However, Sharon was already taking several steps ahead of them. Maybe he's running with all his talents burning at their limit. Amy knew this, but she couldn't help feeling upset. She watched Sharon's back with a piercing gaze, transmitting it to her heart. Hurry up and catch up to me. I won't really let you go if you fall behind. The two women, after finishing their secret conversation, hastened their pace to catch up to Sharon and Rian. After they met, Sharon and the others climbed the hill to the villa while exchanging various stories. Then suddenly, Tess stopped and cautioned in a hushed voice. Shh, silence. Why all of a sudden? Asked Amy, turning to Tess. At first, she thought Tess was playing another one of her jokes, but when she saw her serious expression, Amy immediately closed her mouth. Tess, who trains in sword handling with swords, focuses on the sensory constructions with schema. Although not as good as archers, her sensitivity to stimuli was far beyond ordinary people. Sharon and Rian noticed the atmosphere with a delay and approached her. Tess also signaled to them to keep quiet with a raised finger. There's someone in front of the villa. Judging by his lung capacity, it's a man. If his physique is average, he should measure between 170 to 175 centimeters in height. Rian grabbed the handle of the large sword behind his back. After the commotion in the royal palace last night, there was a good chance of intruders. I don't sense any enemies, but be prepared just in case. Tess whispered as she silently walked like a cat, and the other three followed her slowly. Upon reaching the villa, they saw someone standing in front of the gate. The figure, visibly only in a silhouette, didn't move and was looking in another direction. Sharon's group cautiously advanced without letting their guard down. However, before they took a few steps, the figure lost balance and collapsed on the ground. Sharon and the others glanced at each other and quickly ran towards the gate. The unexpected midnight visitor was Jeez. It was difficult to find an intact spot on his face, indicating he had been through a tough time. Sharon grabbed Jeez from the side and supported him. Just the touch of his hand made Jeez's face creased with pain. Oh, ouch, it hurts. Are you okay? Who did this to you? Get away from me. Jeez pushed Sharon away. He didn't want to reveal who was responsible for his current state. He didn't want to appear weak, especially not in front of Amy as before. Jay sat with his back against the door. When Sharon approached him again to support him, he forced a painful laugh and lifted the corners of his mouth. Having fun this late at night, your wit seems to have dulled. Jay's condition seemed critical, but Tess remained alert throughout. She knew Jace was the one who had manipulated Amy with some strange method the previous night, leading her into danger. No matter how injured he was, she had no intention of trusting him. Amy, on the other hand, approached without hesitation. Instead of trusting Jeez as someone who understood the rules of this world, she had an idea of what happened. What happened to you? Tell me, was it Volkova? Instead of answering Amy, Jeez lifted his head and glared fiercely at Sharon. Now that he thought he could stand up to Sharon, he felt a little better. It's Amy's life that he saved as he was nearing the end of his life. Wouldn't it be okay for him to be the main character at least for a minute when he had to explain everything? Hey, you, listen carefully. Take care of your woman. What are you talking about? As Sharon tilted his head, not understanding, Jeez frowned terribly. He had guessed it from the conversation he had with Amy in the carriage. The fact that the relationship between the two couldn't be clearly defined. That's why it made him even more frustrated. He didn't know why he had to go through all this trouble because of Sharon, who had everything he didn't have. Amy, that idiot, she messed things up with that kind of approach. So take care of her to the end. I have no idea what you're talking about. Why, Amy? We were together all day today. Jeez remembered Volkova's instructions. Even thinking about it now, it was absurd, and he couldn't help but burst into laughter. He told me to bring her, even if it meant killing her. He mixed loop into a drink in a fatal dose and asked me to give it to Amy, saying she would have no choice but to drink it. This lunatic. Rian widened his eyes like a tiger and clenched his fists. The others were equally outraged. Of course, Amy wasn't foolish enough not to realize Volkova's plan. However, given her pride and her red eyes abilities, it was a problem where something terrible could have happened. Tess, who had been thinking so much, shivered with chills. I'm going crazy. I knew he wasn't normal, but he went to such extremes. Sharon's voice trembled like never before. So what about that drink? I threw it away. I told him I couldn't do it. Do you understand now? I'm protecting Amy. It's not you, it's me. I risked my life to keep her safe. Got it, you idiot? Sharon and the others firmly closed their mouths. They couldn't refute, and they didn't want to. Sharon knelt down to meet Jeez at eye level. Jeez, that's why. Jeez cut off Sharon's words and shouted loudly. While shouting with all his might, the pain increased as if his ribs were breaking. But the reason his tears fell like a waterfall was not because of the pain. That's why. Jeez lay flat. Then he rested his forehead on the ground and spoke with a sobbing voice. Please, help me. Sharon and the others said nothing and just looked at Jeez, who lay face down. My sister. It seems like they took my sister. After I regained consciousness, I went to the store. They said she had gone home. But when I went home, She wasn't there either, so I went to look for her. But no one would help me. Please help me find my sister. I beg you. Jeez, who begged Sharon and the others, broke down, crying and repeated his plea. Sharon looked at him with a mix of anger and sadness. How long had he wandered the streets in this state? Who would care about a sister from an alley? His desperate pleas as he shouted his sister's name amid everyone else's indifference were vividly remembered. My sister, my younger sister, my everything. Any assumptions? Where they might have taken your sister. Beast raised his head. Since no one was willing to help, he had come seeking assistance. But even if someone wanted to help, they would have to directly confront the Freeman organization ruling the island. As strong as their magic might be, their lives wouldn't be guaranteed, so he thought it wouldn't be easy to ask for a favor. That's why he pleaded with the determination to sacrifice even his life if necessary. However, Sharon didn't even think twice and asked where they might have taken her sister. Thank you very much. Jeez repeatedly bowed his head. This was the extent of his gratitude that he could express. Amy, watching him disapprovingly, grabbed Jeez by the arm and lifted him up. Enough. Do you do what you were doing? Acting like this all of a sudden makes us even more suspicious. Let's get inside for now. We'll talk while we treat your wounds. But my sister, stupid. If we recklessly rush without thinking, we'll be the first ones in trouble. If she was kidnapped on your way back home, there's still plenty of time. I'll even fly if necessary. So let's treat your wounds first. Amy supported Jeez and opened the villa's door. Even though she was also concerned about the girl named Yuna, for now, tending to his injuries took precedence. As Jeez lay on the bed, Tess helped him remove his clothes. Having learned numerous combat aids, she could assess G's condition at a glance. From the pattern of the bruises, it was evident his ribs were injured. Tess pressed various parts of G's body. Ow, it hurts. Of course it hurts. You were ruthlessly beaten. Endure it. Endure a bit. I need to check your organs too. Tess pressed as hard as she could on G's abdomen. Organs shielded by skin and muscles were difficult to examine unless they were pressed hard enough to cause unbearable pain. Oh, it must have been maddeningly painful, but G's desperately endured it. It was for the idea that he might go rescue Yuna alone once the treatment was completed as soon as possible. Thank goodness he has a broken rib, but the rest are minor superficial wounds. Organs are fine too. Surprisingly, you have a robust body. G smiled bitterly. While he couldn't fight because he constantly faced numerous nobles, he had become accustomed to being beaten. G explained the situation while Tess applied bandages. Based on Yuna's work schedule and the time she should have arrived home, they estimated she was kidnapped about 2 hours ago. They would have taken her to their hideout, so they haven't arrived there yet. However, we couldn't have precisely matched their time. I just want Yuna to be alive. Amy cut off G's words. No, it's okay. They probably travel by courage, but if we borrow horses, we can easily catch up to them. Where exactly is the hideout? It must be quite far from here. I haven't been there either. I heard it's in the north of the island, but I'm not sure. No, that's probably it. Sharon was sure that place would be a hideout. The north of the island was a natural cliff. Wasn't that why when they first arrived here, the boat circled the island and docked at the southern port? Additionally, if it was in the north, it was close to the autonomous district of Kerugo, so it was out of the government's reach. There was no better environment to use as a hideout. Okay, let's go then. Can you manage on your own? Jace nodded. He intended to accompany Sharon even if the wound worsened. Still, the reason for his dark expression was self-reproach for involving unrelated people in this. Are you really okay? It's fun to ask for help and say this, but they're very strong. Amy snorted. Even if it wasn't for Jace's sister, she had always intended to deal with Falcoa someday. End of chapter 144. Chapter 145. The name Parrot, Z. Humph. They're just bullies. Don't worry and wait for us to return. Jeez confessed what he knew. He didn't want to scare those who were going to save his brother, but he couldn't bear the guilt on his conscience if he sent them off this way. They appeared out of nowhere and took over the island in 3 months. They're not a simple organization. According to one of Falcoa's direct subordinates, they were known as the Parrot Bandits. Before arriving on the island, parrot thieves. Sharon's eyes widened. Amy too was lost in thought as if this was unexpected. The parrot bandits were the thieving gang to which a man named Lucas, who had raided the academy with Arcane, belonged. Amy had seen Lucas' martial arts. As the effect of Abyss Nova faded, she remembered him as a formidable enemy who couldn't be defeated even with the combined attack of Iroki and Need. If it hadn't been for Sienna's sudden intrusion, the situation where all the students would be safe wouldn't have been possible. Nevertheless, knowing their identity didn't change the situation. It was crucial to leave as soon as possible, as the life of an innocent girl was at stake. It's okay, we've even fought and won against pirate bandits. Vice leader. G swallowed his tears and gritted his teeth. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing so much for a guy like me. Until now, the nobles G's met didn't even treat the back alley gang as human beings. Perhaps it was natural. Why would they, monopolizing the wealth of and fame of the world, pay attention to someone from the shadows? But these people were different. They were willing to fight for him, who had only planned to deceive others with superficial words. How should I truly repay this favor? Ashamed by G's continuous gratitude, Amy put her hand on her waist and sighed, enough. Somehow he saved me. Rather, it's us who have been helped. But it's such a dangerous task. No need to complicate things. It's not like we don't know each other now. Moreover, you asked for it like a man, so we're doing this. Jeez looked at Amy with an absurd expression. How could the words be manly fit in this situation? Shouldn't it be the other way around? If you pity me, forget it. Manly my foot. What kind of man would beg so embarrassingly? I have no pride left. What are you talking about? You threw away your pride to ask for your sister back. Well, that's true, but Amy and Gent Amy smiled and gently pushed G's forehead. That's what being a man means, idiot. When Amy left those words and walked away, G's almost burst into tears, but he felt he had to hold back. It was because he thought that if he cried now, it would pour cold water on his resolve. Rian patted G's on the shoulder and followed Amy. Don't worry, you saved my friend, so I'll make sure to save your sister too, added Tess. Instead, you should give them a proper tour when they return. I'll definitely get what we've earned for our effort, said Sharon. In the end, Jeez couldn't contain his tears. Ignoring his bandaged wound, he ran to the door and shouted to Sharon and the others as they walked away. Be careful. You really have to be careful. I won't forgive you if you don't return safely. Sharon and the others didn't look back, but their quickly hastened steps were a more definitive answer than 100 words. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Sharon and his group rented 4 horses in the western commercial district. Tess believed that if they were pursuing in a carriage with little mobility, they wouldn't be able to arrive on time. Even though they boasted to Cheese, the actual situation was unfavorable. Above all, the identity of the Freeman organization, which they learned about belatedly, weighed heavily on their hearts. The vice captain of the Parrot Bandits, Lucas, was a Class B criminal. The number of delinquents wasn't just a measure of the severity of the offense, but also an estimate of their power. Even a serial killer disturbing the city wouldn't be confined to the Inferno Western prison if they weren't strong but mentally ill. Sharon had a premonition that they were involved in something quite serious. Certainly, there was something strange. After the Arkan incident, she heard that the leader of the Parrot Bandits was a Class A criminal and currently wanted. So who was this Freeman of the Freeman organization they had to contend with now? Amy, are you really sure it's the Pirate Bandits Guild? Doesn't it feel like something's off? I thought the same. How could a wanted organization establish a base in a touristy place? The pursuit of the Pirate Bandits Guild must have intensified after the Arkan incident. Tess, riding to the right of Amy, interjected in the conversation. It's not the Pirate Bandits Guild. Huh? Do you know something? The name Pirate Bandits might have changed when they crossed over to the Tormia Kingdom. Their original name is the Pirate Mercenary Band. Mercenary Band? They were mercenaries? Then what about Lucas? I don't know what about that, but I do know how they became a band of bandits. How's that? Sharon asked immediately, but Tess was afraid to tell them. In terms of content, it was a common story. However, in this situation where they had to fiercely fight in the future, she thought that the information about them could break Sharon's fighting spirit. Tess, if you know something, tell us. When even Amy couldn't contain her curiosity and asked. Tess couldn't help but start explaining. There was a rather controversial incident related to the pirate mercenary band on the continent. Do you know about the vase incident that happened in the Iron Kingdom 7 years ago? Ah, I do. I learned about it at the academy. What Sharon knew was this. At the noble gathering in the Iron Kingdom, an upper house noble named Valtes announced that he would give his prized vase to anyone who proved braver than him. Then a lower house noble named Moose challenged him. What he did was throw the prize vase against the wall. On the surface, it seemed like a venture among drunken nobles, but a closer look revealed the long gestating political conflict. The noble system in Iron is bicameral. The upper house conveys the king's will, and the lower house represents the common people. Thanks to that, the Iron Kingdom has become a wealthy country, but the conflict between nobles is severe. Including commoners in politics weakens the nobles' authority. But as the number of autonomous commoners increased, the nation's wealth was destined to strengthen. The power of the upper house comes from authority, and the lower houses comes from taxes. Ultimately, conflict between the two factions was inevitable. When Moose, a lower house noble, acted arrogantly, Valtes' stomach boiled. It might have been dismissed at that moment, but the resentment remained. But what does that have to do with the pirate bandits? No, with the pirate mercenary band. There was a plague outbreak, and 3 months later, a civil war broke out in Moose territory. An unknown army invaded. From here, it's information I heard through intelligence that it was Valtes who instigated the civil war by hiring mercenaries instead of soldiers to attack Moose. So could it be that the mercenaries were involved were that's right. They're the pirate mercenaries. Of course, many mercenary groups participated, but the pirate mercenaries displayed overwhelming power and broke through Moose's defenses. However, just as they were about to break the resistance, Valta's soldiers suddenly came from the rear and attacked the mercenary group by surprise. Sharon could guess the situation at that moment, hire mercenaries to attack the enemy, then use private soldiers to attack the mercenaries. That way, victory and innocence could be obtained simultaneously. Valtes had no intention of executing Moose from the start, because the power of the lower house, backed by the commoners, is stronger than expected. I suppose they only wanted to give them a good scare, so from the beginning, the mercenaries were just disposable pawns to assault the territory and punish them again. A perfect strategy. But if it ends like that, wouldn't the lower house nobles just stay silent? Of course, they wouldn't, but they couldn't show it on the surface. After all, the upper house are nobles protected by the king. There must have been some kind of agreement. The fact that Moose hasn't brought up the incident over the last 7 years means they must have received some compensation from Baltes. After hearing that, Rian frowned with disgust. So were the mercenaries the only ones left out in the cold? I can't understand the politician's thoughts. It's against chivalry. It's natural to think that way, but I've come across much more unsettling intelligence in my family. The world doesn't always go as we think. Everyone fell silent at Tess's words. One day they must advance to a place where the great power of the world operates. The plague incident wasn't their affair, but it wasn't else's affair either. Whatever it is, they were abandoned. All the mercenaries who attacked Moose's territory were executed on the pretext of treason, and the pirate mercenary band was naturally dissolved. Then Amy asked, but in the end, they survived, didn't they? That's why they must have sought refuge in the Termea kingdom. That's right, the mercenary band was destroyed, but a small number of capable individuals managed to escape the battlefield. From here on, it's guesswork, but wouldn't it have been difficult for those branded as rebels to maintain a mercenary group? That's why they fell into banditry and eventually flowed to the island when accused of being criminals. Tess' reasoning was reasonable, but Sharon felt somewhat uneasy. Above all, to maintain the name Parrot while fleeing from the charge of treason, they would have needed substantial resources and power, and an exceptionally capable leader. Could it just be a coincidence with the name, right? After all, there are countless guilds in the world, and the name Parrot isn't particularly rare. Tess hesitated to answer. The situation she had been worried about had finally arrived. Sharon, do you remember the woman you mentioned last time? Huh? Nuna Marcia? After rescuing Amy from the royal palace while having a late night snack, Sharon briefly spoke about Marcia. Of course, he didn't go into detail about everything. More than anything, I intended to take the story of how she almost suffered a terrible fate at the hands of her adoptive father to the grave. When I heard that what Jeez had to say, when I heard what Jeez had to say, I thought it was just speculation, but there is a reason why that is not possible. The name of the leader who was leading the pirate mercenary band at that time came to my mind. The name of the leader, isn't it Freeman? Claire Marcia, that's the name of the leader. When Tess finally confessed, Sharon's expression went blank. The image of Marcia, who had been kind to him as an older sister, and the leader of the mercenary band, Marcia, did not properly merge in his mind. At first, I thought they were just two people with the same name, but when I heard that she was raised by mercenaries, I wondered. Then, after hearing from Jeez, I became convinced those who rule this island are the remnants of the Class A mercenaries who were betrayed in the Kingdom of Iron 7 years ago. It can't be. How could Nuna Marcia? I explained it back then. She is not the type of person who does bad things like this. Really? Tess looked at Chiron with an intense gaze. She was different than usual. It was the eyes of a spy who could see through a person's mind. Do you really believe it? About the Marcia you're thinking of? Chiron bit his lip. He really knew it. As much as he wanted to trust her, his insight was already questioning everything. I'm sorry, you're probably right. It seems so. As he examined each one, all the circumstances aligned. Now he could understand her reaction when she spoke of collusion between nobles and criminals. Translator's notes. Bicameral refers to a legislative body or system of government consisting of two separate chambers of houses. Uh, okay. Oops, my explanation to. Noble Valtes of the upper chamber or Valtes, the noble of the upper chamber. Sangwon refers to the upper chamber, which often is the higher, more prestigious chamber in a bicameral legislative system. 2. Noble moose of the lower chamber, or moose. The noble of the lower chamber. Hawon refers to the lower chamber, which typically is the lower or less powerful chamber in a bicameral legislative system. Example, United States. The United States Congress is comprised of the Senate as the upper chamber and the House of Representatives as the lower chamber. I am using chamber because I like how it sounds. End of chapter 145.